Well, hey, Terrell Royster here, Big Go About Media. Hey, how you doing? How you guys doing today?
We're doing great. How are you, Terrell? Terrell.
Pretty good, pretty good. Yeah, it gets mixed up all the time. It's all good. I watched this movie Rent Free, and honestly, I did not know what to expect because I am in this whole era of no trailers, go straight into the movie. And had I known this movie was going to be chaotic, I felt like I needed a drink after watching this movie. like,
We sometimes needed a drink making it. So
I guess, but I always like to get into the behind the scenes of a lot of it, especially for you two. What was this like on set? Just working and like the time it took to film this movie in its entirety.
it was honestly it was the best summer of my life. I mean, but I say that as someone that thrives off chaos and high anxiety in the best way because I think that when you're trying to achieve a movie that's this big and this ambitious in terms of just scope, like the amount of characters, the amount of actors, the amount of locations,
Right.
and you're trying to make it on in a very small indie scale versus this is the same setup and structure as a studio road comedy, but we're making it on such a different canvas. And I think that of course that's going to feel really just really chaotic, like you said, but in the best way. I mean, if you surround yourself with collaborators that know what you're going for, if everyone has the same vision, even if it's not a very specific vision, even if they just kind of know what the tone is and they know they have the script and they believe in the film, I think that that just leads to the best kind of yeah, just experience just making it. But yeah, I felt it depended on the day too, I think that we would hop from Airbnb to locate to a friend's house to a bohemian loft in New York. Every setting brought with it like its own kind of atmosphere and different actors as well. So yeah, it switched up, but I think that because we love everyone that was involved in the film so much, it was just kind of a new adventure every day. I know
Yeah.
that sounds kind of trite, but it was true. But it was
No, no.
true. Yeah.
We shot for it was not a short shoot either. We shot for 27 shooting days in Austin, and then 3 shooting days in New York. And when we were in Austin at the in true rent-free spirit, at the end of every day, I got to go home and crash on Fernando's couch in Austin. Um, so it really was like eating, drinking, breathing this film, particularly for me and Fernando, because we were both producing and then working, obviously, as the director, working as an actor, particularly for us, but for everyone, because I think that this this project really was it was very collaborative, and it really was we really were also just trying to both on and off set have have fun with this group of people that were making something that we all were really passionate about, and a group of people, a lot of whom were our friends going in, and then those whom we didn't know beforehand certainly are some of our closest friends now.
For Fernando, in terms of like the writing side of it, I mean, and I just want to say congratulations for getting this movie on the Tribeca Film Festival scene in the first place. Like I said, I would say normally this, I feel like I usually stick to a certain genre of movies, but with Tribeca, I feel like I'm more willing to like put myself out there for different types of movies. And I'm glad I came across this movie because it's definitely out of like the whatever number I've seen so far, it's definitely one in my top, like my top five, top three, whatever you want to. It's definitely it has funny. And like I said, it feels like I don't know if it's just the way it's written, but it just makes me uncomfortable. And I and not and because like I think seeing people live that way, and I was like, I couldn't do it. You know, was the idea like, was this like completely original idea? Was this like, based off a book or anything like that, or was this completely written from you?
Yeah, and I love hearing that that's your reaction to it because we'll get all kinds of reactions to the living rent-free concept. Like, I think some people will be like, "Oh, that I just wish I could just drop everything and do that." Like, that's what I want. And then people are like, and I feel like I see it as an exaggeration. The whole concept is kind of an exaggeration of like wanting to drop out of um the high stress just existence that we all have of trying to live in these expensive cities. I mean, we came up with I myself and my co-writer Tyler Rue, who co-wrote and co-directed my first feature, Three-Headed Beast. We just we love high concepts, and this film, while it is a film about 20 somethings figuring out life and love in this in the city, like it's still they're still very high concept ideas. And I think with this one, the idea was to, well, there are many films about people couch surfing or crashing at other people's places, but like, what if they really were making a social experiment out of it? What if they were making it a lifestyle and trying to make it last over a year? That was what made it exciting to us. And so, but we also wanted to see what the logical conclusion of that would be. Like, I think that that premise could be in a lot of different movies and different styles. And I think that we tried to find maybe a more cringe comedy kind of realist kind of way of looking at it, where it's like the reality of that situation would be tough and it would be full of misunderstandings and discomfort.
Yeah.
And the idea is that it pushes their friendship to the brink. So that's kind of how we thought of the film originally. And then we had kind of an unorthodox writing experience with it because we had the concept and the structure, but we needed the casting of it to really flesh out the script. And so that's why I told Jacob about the film before we even had an outline of the film, honestly, like when it was just a one-page summary. And while working with Jacob, we came up with the outline, the structure, and then we started writing roles for actors and friends who would act in the film, but who are actors in their own right. And yeah, it was an organic process.
I think as far as the uncomfortable aspect of the film too, that's such a fun thing to play with as an actor because you're it's really easy, or not easy, but it makes it more enjoyable to kind of throw yourself into the circumstances of the scene because you're like, always going in, you're like, oh God, you're imagining like, what if I were in this situation, right? Good God, what kind of person puts themselves in this situation? And but that's such a funnier and more fun thing to play with, is these characters who, through their own decisions, are ending up in these really uh gnarly social situations where they are pushing and pushing and pushing the extent to which they can take advantage of these people's hospitality without like contributing anything or like moderating their behavior at all or like being accommodating. And it's just like, oh God, I mean, I'm the kind of person who's like, I'm very that's just not necessarily me. I mean, I'm like fixated on maybe I don't know if I was a good guest when I was staying.
He was a great, I was about to say, he's a very considerate guest. Yeah.
And I'm like, go out of my way to be like, yeah, no, I'm gonna freaking I'll do your dishes. I don't need to do my own dishes. Like, and these characters are such the opposite of that. So for the one thing, there's just the challenge and the fun of playing someone unlike yourself. But then for the other thing, there's also cringe comedy is some of my favorite stuff. And I think that, I mean, one of my favorite television shows is what is
No, I just know you're
is Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh yeah,
And,
Larry David.
but that's such a different world, right? That is, it's the same like horrible social etiquette or like, but it's such a different world because it's this Curb Your Enthusiasm is this world of like this multi-millionaire you know, TV show creator who like, you know, lives in a mansion in Santa Monica or whatever. And so I just wanted to like take that same sort of energy and bring it to something that I think that people in our generation will relate to a lot more in terms of just like the hustle and the kind of like trying, you know, the improvisation of like how are we gonna make this work? Like you know, how are we gonna make being you know, an Uber Eats or Favor as it is. There's a like a
Well, it's Muncher in the film.
in the film.
Yeah.
We don't want any lawsuits. So but yeah, like how and you know, how am I going to make that work? You know, I think that that's more I like that same energy, but in a more relatable environment or for more relatable characters in that respect.
Understandable. I did have a small footnote. That's something that I would wanted to know, maybe from a director standpoint, or how have you guys decided to? What was the, I guess, what was the point of mentioning in the movie the price of the houses and the size of the houses?
Yeah, well, so the size, yeah, I mean, that's just to have, I mean, those title cards are the chapter headings for each of the locations. I thought it was really important to give context, that basically like explaining like what each, just so that the viewer is immediately oriented with like the details of the space. I mean, like the bedrooms, like I think that's what you, for a minute I was wondering what you meant by the side, but yeah, like the bedrooms and like the listing of the address,
Right.
the fictional addresses. But those were, yeah, to orient the viewer in the details and the specificity of the location. But of course, the important thing there is the rent prices. I mean, like that's the thing that bothers me about a lot of films in general. But I think indie films, especially when we're just kind of living in a vague like economic setting where you're just kind of wondering like what like I don't know if, I mean, I know that there are other viewers out there like me, but you're just kind of wondering like how do they afford that house with
Right. Yeah. Because
what they have?
I guess it also sets up to kind of let you know the standing of their friend group, like the people they're friends with, like how much money they're making too. Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, you know, but that makes a lot more sense because, like, you know, they go from a mansion to, you know, what, a $3,000 2-bedroom apartment, you know, stuff like that. You know, how is this person affording this? But yeah.
Yeah, because the entirety of the film is about, I mean, the social arrangement of the film is just how people treat friends and treat people in their lives according to our money ties, like our socioeconomic like setting, like that is just such an important background to the film that I love when people pick up on, like that is really like the background humming underneath everything. And yeah, I don't know. And also I love the specificity of it. You know, I was listening to um Greta Gerwig talk about Frances Ha. It was like an old interview from like 10 years ago. And she was talking about how they avoided ever mentioning the rent of specific apartments because they didn't want to date the film. They wanted it to feel timeless. And that obviously, I mean, that film's a masterpiece that worked for that film. But it was great to hear that and remember like why we made the opposite choice, because this is a very specific film. This is a post-COVID film. This is a Austin in the early 2020s film. Like I'm very interested in capturing like a snapshot of like what these places cost and what they look like and what they feel like at this time.
That makes all the sense in the world. Jacob, throwing this back to you, man. You know, you're the centerpiece of this film. You know, you and David. I gotta say, like I said, and this is my, this not to say that I have, this is my first time seeing you in a movie, And I gotta say, for me, this you've knocked it out of the park for me. You and David, your chemistry in this movie is great, man. Like I don't know if you guys have done anything, outside of this, if you were friends in real life, but you could tell, like, I don't know, did y'all just get it like day one coming into this, or it took a while?
We really we'd met online a couple months and before we started shooting, but we really only met in person in Austin about 5 days before we started shooting. And I feel really lucky to have worked with David because, well, for one thing, one of the reasons you may not have seen me is this is my first feature film.
Congrats.
Thank you as an actor, and one of David's too. Immediately with David, I this is not what the relationship is on screen, but immediately I sort of thought of him as like kind of like a little brother. Like he is so like he's a very kind, sweet person, and and he's a couple years younger than I am, and I just immediately felt like, oh, I want to protect this pure soul. Um, and with that aspect of the relationship and that almost like, kind of like tenderness that I felt for him in that way, it was like, okay, immediately we did have a connection. It was like, all right, how do we take what we have in real life just through kind of this instant chemistry in that way and then translate it to the screen? And it really was effortless. I mean, it never felt like, I remember when I used to act in stuff in like high school or whatever, sometimes the teacher like would send you and your co-lead, like if you were playing like Romeo and Juliet in like a play or something, they'd be like, go on a date, like here's some money for pizza, go on a date. Trying to like craft this intimacy, like, okay, all right, at a certain point it's either there or it isn't,
Yeah.
and David, it was there, and we didn't have to manufacture it through going on a little friend date or anything. Yeah, it feels like luck, but I know it wasn't luck. It was the casting process. It was luck.
It's so funny because I hear you mention that, and I think that's why I'm so mad at your character Ben throughout the entire movie. And as I'm talking to you, I'm like, oh, he's a really nice guy. And I hate to overly use this word because it's been overly used a lot, but your character is just so toxic, man. Like it's just it's so annoying to the point where you as the audience, you know what you need to do. You
Yeah.
know what needs to be said. And I think a lot of this movie, and something I said in my review, is accountability. People need to hold each other accountable. These two friends need to call each other out on their BS. Your character specifically, every situation that you guys have put yourselves in is because of you. And that pretty much, like, it takes the entire movie to figure that out, and they still kind of dance around it and avoid it even too at the end, where everybody else sees it, but they, for whatever reason, don't want to acknowledge what the problem really is. And like I said, it's a lot of situations throughout the movie. I'm like, man, Ben, like, I'm just waiting for Ben to do something. I'm like, every time they get to the new house, I'm like, yeah, Ben's gonna mess this up. It's a scene where they go back to your character's parents' house, and he's like, man, I'm done. I'm trying to chill. You're like, no, we gotta go. I'm like, let the man stay. Let him get his head together. And I was just like, man. But like I said, when it all comes down to it, you're like, okay, these characters are even still fighting that change that you see at the end of the movie. Like, okay, they try to figure out this whole unorthodox way to just say, hey man, we should probably just not be friends anymore. Or, maybe we should go our separate paths, because all of these events which stem from the New York, which happened with Ben, then trickle down back to Texas. I'll be, I guess the question was, how long did it take you to kind of get out of that mindset from Ben, and was it just instant back to yourself? Like,
Uh, oh, I mean, I try to, leave it all on the field, as it were. You leave it all on the court, or leave it all on I'm like, I got it out. I got it all out on camera. I think, if anything, I came away from it with a heightened social awareness, and even more. I think if I was if I was a very deliberately accommodating and good guest beforehand, now even more so because I'm like, good God, I've been Ben. I'm never gonna be Ben again. You know.
Do you feel like obviously watching this movie that you see yourself kind of differently on screen than you do obviously in real life? Like Mike, who is this guy? Who is this person, this character?
I feel like in the best world, movies and characters capture and exaggerate some of our, worst tendencies. And
Right.
I think even, when you watch a film, the filmmaker has really succeeded if they make you relate to and understand those characters that really can also alienate and upset and frustrate you. Um, I do see myself in Ben, but you know, an exaggerated version of, my worst fears of what I could be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, it's a lot. Like I said, I could imagine like I think like because like the movie's about an hour 30 or so, something like that. But I kind of do sit here and I'm thinking about it right now, like, okay, where do Ben and Jordan kind of end up at the end of all this? Is this something where we need a sequel, or like is this something where we could just leave it on the table as is and just assume that they're okay? Because it's one of those titles like, yeah, we could do more, but we kind of need to leave it as is. Did you guys kind of leave more on the table for that ending? Because I know what how it ends is kind of like off in the sunset type thing. But was there more on the table there?
I mean, I think that a feature we weren't thinking. I think we're inclined to think of things as standalone
Right.
things, working on stuff, and I think a feature film is always just going to be, even if it takes place over 30 years or 24 hours, like a film is always just going to be a snapshot, and it's going to be about whatever moment you want it to be about. And I think for us, this film was about the moment that this friendship changes, the moment that this friendship is pushed to kind of an extreme. And yeah, I think that for me, I mean, as a filmmaker, I think that one of the most satisfying things that you can leave an audience with is the ability to kind of like think about their own ending for it. I mean, I think we give you an ending, but I think that you can ponder like what else goes beyond, like what is that friendship going to become? Yeah, I think that any film that is great and leaves with you, leaves with the audience like in their minds is going to leave some room for them to think about it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any plans for like distribution for the movie? Because I'm honestly like, this is already a movie that I know I want to have on my shelf, Blu-ray, 4K. I want to show to friends just so I can make them as uncomfortable as I am with just how people socially, this social experience of living out of your car and people's houses. And constantly feel like you're stepping on a landmine in people's space. I think that's the biggest thing about this movie is having your own space, and then involving yourself in people's everyday, seeing how people are behind closed doors when you're invading their space, as you see throughout the movie, where you have the one scene where you have the one couple who's arguing, you have the one where we have ex-girlfriends living in the same house, and now every turn has become uncomfortable. But yeah, what did you have any plans for distribution as far as like after the festival and everything?
We are gonna take it to the festival. We're going to show, people are going to see it at the festival. And I think that already, we've heard such positive reactions for people, and we're excited to see how people receive the film. And then, yeah, we're gonna we're gonna lock down our distributor, and we're gonna make sure that this gets out to as many people as can possibly see the film.
Yeah, yeah. and that could be any shape or form, theatrical or streaming or whatever. But I love hearing the love for physical media. That's great.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, protect physical media. That there's so much that gets lost to the digital age now. And I sound like an old man right now. I'm not that old, but but there's just so many movies, films, TV that get lost to the digital, or the comfortability of stuff going to digital, or Netflix, Hulu, stuff like that, and you get locked into these contracts where we'll never get to see it. But plus, I'm also excited about special features. I hope you guys do commentary because I'm sure it'll be hilarious. But but that's mainly like my biggest thing. I just hope you guys do a commentary track on it.
We're gonna get you your Blu-ray.
Blu-ray. But yeah, on that note, like I said, thank you guys so much for doing this interview. The movie was amazing. This is a 5 out of 5 for me so far on the Tribeca list. Like I said, I wasn't expecting this to be as funny as it was. Jacob, you were freaking hilarious. I did this, like I said, for this to be your first feature film, you nailed it out the park. The writing is there. Your acting is phenomenal. Like I said, you did a good job of just upsetting me throughout the entire movie, which means that which means your character, your acting is phenomenal. Like I said, everything was great. Like I said, I hope to see you guys do more in the future. I'm really excited to see what's next on the movie tour list for you guys. Past Tribeca, I know I'm going to see you guys, throughout years to come. But like I said, this was amazing. Thank you for taking the time to do this with me today. I really appreciate this. Fernando, Jacob, thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
man. This was lovely. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I love. Yeah, you were great. Thank you.
Appreciate you. See you guys later.
Bye.